And we're going to start again now with Nichol Wheatley, who is a Scottish artist who mainly paints landscapes. He's also worked with film designers, made huge mosaics and murals, and has acted as the art consultant for infrastructure projects, the current one being the redevelopment in and around Stockenfield Bridge, where Nichol and the team have been developing an innovative arts programme with community engagement at its core. And he's just finished that on Friday, he told me, and the launch of that is this coming Friday night up at Stockenfield Bridge. That sounded a fantastic event in itself. One of the legacies of this will be a new public artwork called Bella, a Bethier, whose name was inspired by his good friend and collaborator, Alasdair Gray. Nichol spent 15 years working with him, most notably on the mural here at Òran Mór, the SPT Hillhead Underground Station mural, and Gray's proposed mural for the Scottish Parliament. What a treat to hear firsthand from someone who helped paint this incredible auditorium mural. Please welcome Nichol.
Thank you for a lovely, lovely introduction, which I'm not worthy of. And I apologize to all the kids in the room. This is going to be really boring. This is about how Alasdair made this. I had the privilege of working with Alasdair for 15 years. Alasdair was kind enough to describe me as his colleague, as I never worked for him. Rather, I worked alongside him on his projects. It's a minor but important distinction. Sorry, I'm nervous. It's a minor but important distinction, and one that I value really more than I should. The reason I mention it, and the reason I mention it at the beginning, is it meant that most of the work that we undertook was discussed rather than instructed. So we spent lots and lots of time just talking through everything that he made. Lots and lots and lots of people worked to deliver Alasdair's incredible vision here, including Steph Gardner, who's sitting at the back, and Robert Salmon. The mural that we sit under today is called A Small Scottish Model of the Universe. I asked him once if he was absolutely sure that this was the title, and he said, yes, I've rehearsed saying it several times. It's probably Alasdair's greatest visual work, and in many ways it looks to capture a huge number of the themes that he ran through his writing and his artwork, and he was trying to tie them all back in together. It's unfinished. He didn't manage to finish all of the things that he intended for this incredible room. Colin Beattie, the owner of Òran Mór, and Alasdair's greatest patron, asked Alasdair to do this in 2002. Now, to be absolutely correct, he actually asked Alasdair if he considered doing a painting over the bar where the backdrop to Fleck now hangs. At this point, Alasdair looked at the ceiling and said, what colour are you going to paint it? This cost Colin quite a lot of money. The mural was painted in stages over 17 years. Various bits were done right at the beginning with a huge birdcage scaffold that reached all the way up to the ceiling so everybody could paint up there. Alasdair and Robert Salmon and Richard Todd did the first bit before it opened. Ceiling was painted first, so that's the first bit that he painted. And then Alasdair went to work up on the gallery, which I encourage you all to go up and stand up there. You go through the back of the bar and you can walk all the way up the stairs and go and have a look at the incredible painting that's up there. And Alasdair intended you to go and see it. After he did the gallery, he then painted the eastern gable. And after that, we painted all of the walls that you see at the lower levels. And then we painted the eastern gable. And then we did the pillars, and then we did some of the lower details, and then we painted the eastern gable, and then we drew the mirrors, and then we repainted the eastern gable. The first part, the ceiling, shows the night sky, as opposed to the summer daytime skies that you see in most big classical murals. This is the description of this area in Alasdair's own words. This, the biggest area, is painted with the night sky above clouds, and constellations of the zodiac for each month of the year. The moon is between clouds lower down in 6 lunar phases on each side. Along the roof tree, the height of the ceiling, appeared the Milky Way and 5 planets nearest the sun, except the Earth. The ceiling was completed in 2003 before the building opened to the public. By that time, I had worked out a design for the lower walls that both I and Colin Beattie knew would take years to complete. Next stage that he painted after all of this was the gallery. One panel shows a view of the whole world with all the things in it. And then there's the 3 sections with the quote, with the inscriptions inspired by Gauguin's quote, "Where are we from? What are we? What are we doing?" The central panel shows the earth, and the figure above the earth is the Mother Earth Goddess. And now this is a counterpoint to the figure of the Noble Daddy. If you see right above me, the black figure against the gold, which is a reference to Alasdair's admiration of Blake. He had Blake's life mask on his desk all of the time that I knew him. The gallery shows elements of Glasgow, and in many ways, the idea was that the mural would show the view of the universe, both from a Scottish perspective, but also from the literal position of Glasgow. Following that, in 2005, 2006, myself and a gang of painters that were in a team called Perfect Circle Art worked closely with Alasdair to deliver the lower side walls, again in his own words. Nichol Wheatley and his team have made, according to my designs, a red dado around the walls, patterned with the gold stencils of Scottish thistles, English roses, Welsh leeks, and Irish harps. Ventilation ducts on each side of the 8 circular windows, painted to look like pillars in harmony with the auditorium's freestanding support pillars, whose pattern I also designed. The frieze around the lower walls, which is that bit up at the top, they have a repeat pattern of thistles, cats, mice, and sparrows derived from Celtic carvings. On the northern side wall and gable end are portraits of makers, staff, and associates of Òran Mór in 2006. Nichol has framed and positioned these on mirrored backgrounds. The next stage, and the part that was painted about 5 times, was the eastern gable. It is largely unfinished, as Alasdair kept revising it, kept exploring what he was trying to catch in it, because this is the big central piece, the first thing that you're going to look at in the room. Every single bit of blank wall that you see, Alasdair had plans for. The upper area with the windows were to have paintings of tree rising from the tops of the arches to the beginnings of the roof. Each section was to be a drawing of the same 9 native Scottish trees. Each panel would correspond to the panel above, and the drawings would repeat. Each of the repeated panels would show the trees in a different season that would correspond to the zodiac signs in their respective months. There were different decorations planned for each panel, such as birds nesting in spring, fruit in autumn, and the bare leaves in winter. The trees were planned to join the ceiling to the lower sections below and would have folded onto the eastern gable. The overall effect was to suggest that you were standing in a big room looking up through a forest to the night sky above. The sloping panels that you see left and right of us were to have paintings of 10 significant Scottish towns or islands to be seen from the air in the same manner that the Hillhead mural had been drawn. We had great fun choosing and re-choosing the towns. At the base of the eastern gable, the Edinburgh skyline was to be depicted, obviously as Edinburgh is to the east of us. Alasdair and I spent a lot of time planning out these pieces. What we were going to do was paint them as large paintings off-site, then print them up and put them up, because by this point, this room was such a busy room with weddings and events and meetings of the Scottish Parliament and all sorts of things that we couldn't get into the room for long periods of time. In 2015, we were figuring out how we were going to do this, planning out these drawings and trying to see what we were going to do and how we were going to fund it when he had his terrible fall. So everything at that stage paused for a second. The wall that Colin had asked Alasdair to paint right at the beginning, the one over there, was to have a huge crucifixion painting on it. And this crucifixion would have been situated in Glasgow's necropolis. There's a host of other details and painted parts for this room that Alasdair intended. And there's too many for me to be here for another hour and a half, so we're not going to do that. So, and we painted the eastern gable 5 times, and as you can imagine, the scaffolding was huge. It was really quite high. And one of the problems we had with Alasdair was he wouldn't wait for all the support stuff to be in. As soon as they'd built the tower, Alasdair wanted to climb up it so he could get to the top and look at what he wanted to see. The problem was, at that stage, he was 78, and he used to get cramps in his hand, so he had to let go. So anytime he went to climb up the scaffold, 2 of us, especially Steph, used to climb up like this behind him so that we could catch him if he fell. I'd like to talk about how Alasdair approached his work, and it's unlike anything I'd ever experienced. In 2005, I was running my own fine art company, and we were tackling fine art commissions all over Europe. And as a result, and due to a little bit of technical experience, I ended up working for quite a lot of well-known artists, delivering projects for them, or advising on technical things. Many artists would look to see if they could deliver their vision or make the project they had been briefed to do. The projects were always tempered by practical or financial constraints. Whatever happened, the artists I worked with would attempt to do the best that they could in the circumstances. With Alasdair, I found a completely different response. Alasdair saw himself as a servant of art. So in that, he only existed to serve the art that he made. So timetables, budgets, other considerations were secondary importance to the art that he was trying to express. This obviously was not confined to his pictorial art. Everyone who had dealings with Alasdair knew of his disdain of deadlines. However, most of us recognized that this was just the price of working with somebody who was truly remarkable. Alasdair would do anything to make the novel, the drawing, the play, the poem, the article, the mural, the best that he could possibly make it. Several times this led him to complete penury and problems with contracts, sometimes ones that Saoirse had to deal with. This lack of regard for some of these practical concerns was always led by this desire to make the work as good as he could possibly make it. He had a regard for the issues that were around the work, but it wasn't an attitude or a stance he was taking. He utterly believed in the principles that he stood for, and he wanted to make the best art that he could. So that was how he approached it. If the contract and the price, they may have been agreed before he started, but if they had to be sacrificed or renegotiated, that was what he'd do. I've always been honored to be part of this, and it's had a huge effect on my own work. The 14 years that I worked with Alasdair has taught me a huge amount about how to approach making work. I've just completed the head of a large sculpture that I've been making in Mary Hill. It gets unveiled next Friday. The name of the sculpture is the Bethir, and it's a Bethir because that's one of the Fuath, which is the family that the Kelpies belong to, and it's the Scottish Canals Commission. So they commissioned the Kelpies, and this is them commissioning the Bethir. It's intended as a huge community engagement in that we're looking to try and get around 30,000 people involved in making the mosaics that will go onto the body of the Bethir, which is 120 meters long. The other name I've given to this sculpture is Bella and the Seven Winds, and I use the name Bella in homage to my hero, Alasdair, and in relation to Bella Caledonia, the wonderful figure that we see in Poor Things and in this mural. When you look around this room, you see everybody that worked on the project of building Òran Mór and turning Òran Mór from this derelict church into the heart of the culture of the West End that we have here. The chefs, the labourers, some artists, the designers. It's great to see all of them credited. And that was very much Alasdair's egalitarian and socialist response to these situations. So I'm trying to replicate that a little bit in how we credit who worked on the Bethir, including Russell, who's sitting right there. I think of this room as Scotland's Sistine Chapel, so I'm honoured to have contributed to it. I'm honoured to have contributed to it. I'm honoured to have been Alasdair's friend. So that's all I've really got to say. I'd just like to say thank you, and I'd like to say thank you to Saoirse for all the wonderful work that she does with the archive. I've also was wondering if anybody had any questions, we could answer them just now, or you can get me later on. If anyone said, oh no, all right, Steph put his hand up. Steph's going, why am I still here? No, yeah, that's great, no questions.